In the scorching heat of the wilderness, under the vast, unyielding sky, the Israelites found themselves at a crossroads. The air was thick with fear and doubt, a stark contrast to the hope and freedom they had tasted just a short while ago. They had been freed from the clutches of Egypt, a land of oppression and slavery, but now, faced with the daunting task of entering the promised land, they began to question their fate. The journey from slavery to freedom was never going to be easy. But the moment of truth had arrived, and their courage was about to be severely tested. The story begins with a group of 12 men, chosen from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, sent to scout the land of Canaan. They were tasked with bringing back a report on the land's fertility and the strength of its inhabitants. After 40 days, they returned with a mixed message. While the land was indeed flowing with milk and honey, the cities were fortified, and the people were strong and numerous. 10 of the scouts, driven by fear, painted a grim picture, warning the Israelites that they would surely be defeated if they tried to enter the land. Only 2, Joshua and Caleb, stood firm, insisting that with God's help, they could conquer the land. The people, already weary from their long journey, were swayed by the negative report. They wept and moaned, longing for the familiar, albeit oppressive, life in Egypt. They accused Moses and Aaron of leading them to their deaths, and some even suggested appointing a new leader to take them back to Egypt. The despair was palpable, and the community was on the brink of rebellion. Moses and Aaron, recognizing the gravity of the situation, fell on their faces before the assembly, a gesture of deep humility and a plea for divine intervention. Joshua and Caleb, undeterred by the hostility, tore their garments and spoke boldly to the people. They reminded them of God's promise and the power that was with them. The land we passed through to explore is a very good land, they declared. If the Lord is pleased with us, He will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord. Do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will consume them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. Their words, however, fell on deaf ears. The people, fueled by fear and desperation, were on the verge of stoning Joshua and Caleb to death. It was at this critical moment that the glory of the Lord appeared in the tent of meeting, a divine intervention that halted the violence and silenced the crowd. God's response was swift and severe. He was fed up with the people's constant complaining and lack of faith. He proposed to strike them down with a plague and start anew with Moses, making him the father of a great nation. Moses, ever the intercessor, pleaded with God. He reminded God of the Exodus, the miraculous signs and wonders that had been performed to free the Israelites from Egypt. He argued that if God were to destroy the people now, the Egyptians and other nations would mock him, saying that he was unable to bring the Israelites to the promised land. Moses implored God to show mercy and forgive the people, emphasizing God's attributes of being slow to anger and abounding in kindness. God relented, but the consequences were severe. The entire generation of adults who had left Egypt, with the exception of Caleb and Joshua, would die in the wilderness. They would never enter the promised land. Their children, however, would inherit the land that their parents had feared. The Israelites would wander in the wilderness for 40 years. 1 year for each day the scouts had spent in Canaan. This period of wandering was not just a punishment, but also a time of testing and preparation. It was a chance for a new generation to rise, one that would know only freedom and not the bitterness of slavery. The immediate aftermath of God's judgment was a stark reminder of the consequences of rebellion. The 10 scouts who had brought back the negative report died in a plague, a clear sign of God's displeasure. Joshua and Caleb, the only 2 faithful scouts, were spared. The people, realizing the gravity of their mistake, attempted to go up to the promised land, but it was too late. God was not with them, and they were defeated by the Amalekites and Canaanites. The story of the Israelites in the wilderness is a powerful reminder of the importance of faith and obedience. It is a cautionary tale about the dangers of fear and rebellion. The journey from slavery to freedom is fraught with challenges, but it is a journey that requires trust in a higher power. The Israelites had witnessed countless miracles, from the parting of the Red Sea to the daily provision of manna. Yet they still doubted God's ability to lead them to the promised land. Their lack of faith cost them dearly. The wilderness experience, however, was not just a period of punishment. It was a time of growth and transformation. The 40 years in the wilderness allowed a new generation to emerge, one that was not burdened by the memories of slavery and the fear of the unknown. This new generation would enter the promised land, not as a people of doubt and fear, but as a people of faith and courage. In the end, the story of the Israelites in the wilderness is a story of hope. It is a story that reminds us that even in our darkest moments, there is always a path forward. It is a story that teaches us the importance of trust, obedience, and perseverance. The journey may be long and difficult, but with faith, we can overcome any obstacle and reach our promised land. The wilderness is not the end, but a new beginning.